7 requires certain statements to be made at the commencement of a public hearing. The applicable city and state zoning criteria must be listed. This means that we must advise you of the standards that must be satisfied by the applicant prior to our approval or denial of an application. The planning staff will list the applicable criteria during his or her presentation of the staff report. Persons wishing to participate in this hearing must direct their testimony or the evidence toward the criteria stated by the planner or other specific city or state criteria which you believe apply. You must tell us why the testimony or evidence relates to the criteria. Any issue which might be raised in an appeal of this case to the Land Use Board of Appeals must be raised in person or by letter at the local level prior to the city approving or denying the application. The law states that this issue must be raised in enough detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond. This part of the law is known as the raise it or waive it requirement. If you do not bring it up now, you cannot bring it up at LUBA. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing on an application, any applicant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission will grant such a request through a continuance or extension of the record.
Okay, thank you very much. And I cannot read your name card, so it's Commissioner what? Inglesby?
Nina Inglesby.
Inglesby, I'll get it eventually. I'm very bad at names, so bear with me, please. Thank you. Okay, and just for reference, that was for the quasi judicial public hearing before us regarding CUP 23-0018, a conditional use permit for a single family dwelling as a vacation rental on 1314 North College Street. At this point, I'd like to call for abstentions, bias, ex parte contact, and objections to jurisdictions from members of the commission. So Ms. Inglesby, you're aware of what that all entails?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, good. And from there, we're moving on to the staff report.
Thank you, commissioners. Jeremiah Cromie, Associate Planner for the record. And I will read the staff report into the record once the presentation is pulled up. Okay, so as Chair mentioned, for vacation rental at 1314 North College Street under CUP 23-0018. Maybe I can get the clicker to work. There we go. All right, so this conditional use approval is for an existing single family dwelling as a vacation rental on tax lot 4R3218 AD 06405. The applicable criteria for vacation rentals and conditional use permits is in 15.225.060 and 15.445.300 through 15.445.350.
I mean, I can be the one.
Go for it. So this location is on College Street. It's approximately 0.61 miles north of Hancock Street downtown on College Street. It's across from the Willow Place Assisted Living. Next slide. The zoning is R1, which is low density residential. The property is served by an 8-inch water line, 8-inch sewer line, and stormwater in College. And then the utility for power is from overhead lines. Conditional use criteria and 15.225.060 state the location, size, design, and operating characteristics are reasonably compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and have minimal impacts on livability or appropriate development of abutting property. This property is an existing single family home with 2 bedrooms, 2 off-street parking spaces in the garage and driveway are provided, and it's consistent with other residential uses similar in scope and size in the area. Second criteria for conditional use is location, design, and site planning of the proposed development, provide a convenient, functional living, working, shopping, or civic environment, attractive nature of the use. It's approximately 0.61 miles south of the downtown, Central Business District, as I mentioned, off Hancock, it's 0.61 miles south of the property. And the property is also near George Fox. And it's also similar in size and scope to other owner occupied dwellings rentals in the area. And then the final criteria for conditional use, it's consistent with the code. It's consistent with the code, similar in size and scope and other criteria mentioned in section 15.225.060 and 15.445, which we'll go through. So specific standards for vacation rentals are they have to be in a single family dwelling. 1314 North College is a existing single family dwelling in an R1 district. Second being that to register with the city for a transient lodging tax. The owners indicated that they will register with the city and pay the required lodging tax. Standards require 2 off-street parking spaces and then a maximum occupancy of 2 guests per bedroom. Weekly collection of garbage will be provided by Waste Management and will not include RVs, tents, or other temporary shelters during stay. And then posting of contact information and standards will be posted next to the door. With that, staff recommends the commission to move to adopt Planning Commission Order 2024-01 with conditions approving conditional use permit CUP 23-0018 for a vacation rental home at 1314 North College Street, Yamhill County Tax Lot R3218 AD 06405.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Cromie. Any questions for staff at this point? Okay, any questions from our Zoom commissioners?
So the applicant is on Zoom for this application.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, at this point, I'd like to open the record for public testimony. Speakers will be given a 5-minute time limit other than the applicant, which gets a 15-minute time limit, and the primary opponent, which gets a 15-minute time limit. Seeing as we've only got, Miss, are you here for anything regarding this particular thing? Okay. So we basically have the applicant, if that's correct, and so we will have to hear from them at this point. Do they wish to give any presentation?
Good evening. We are just here not for a presentation, but to answer any questions or concerns that you guys might have. I'm sorry, were you able to hear me? Was the sound?
Yes, we can hear you now. That was very clear. Thank you.
Thank you. No, we have no presentation. We are just here to answer any questions or concerns you might have.
Okay. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant? And what was your name, sir?
I'm Shaheen Purkasali, and my wife, Marjan Ramazani, is also here with me.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing, hearing none, well, oh, go ahead.
Good evening. I think I read in the application somewhere that you have yet to find a management organization to look after the home. Is that right? Did I read that correctly? And I could have read that totally incorrectly, actually.
Well, our first priority thing would be Airbnb, because they do a very good job in screening people, and we also like our neighbors to be happy, and that's very important to us. So we like to rent it through an app that Airbnb, that I know they have good reviews or not, or if they are first renters, we don't want to deal with any first renters. So that's why I think we choose the Airbnb as a priority app.
Yeah, Airbnb seems to be a good option often for different people. I'm wondering though, do you have anybody locally to actually look after the house while it's a vacation rental if it's approved?
So we live close, kind of close to the house. I mean, we are 40, depending on traffic, 40 minutes drive. Our neighbors on both sides of the house we talk to them. They're very nice. We have a good relationship with them. So we have those people and us, but we haven't hired anyone professionally yet.
Do you have a timeline for when and if you decide to hire somebody?
Well, we were waiting for the permit first, and then soon we're gonna look for the professional people. We're looking for recommendation from our neighbors and local people.
See. And this is a question to Clay. Is it possible to make it a requirement that they do hire somebody or have somebody officially represented within a certain area?
If the council has some concerns that want to make sure that it's maintained, then you could condition it so that they, before they activate and begin hosting folks, that they, instead of where it currently says to be determined in the information, that they provide the city with that information so we can make sure that posting information is up to date. Now, the planning commission does not have the authority to require them to hire someone. They could certainly do it themselves. But they would need to state in those informations that are in our conditions of approval, who is responsible for that. And if that is themselves, the rental management company, we don't have anything against that. But they would, as I recall, I think this one's still a to be determined listed in there.
Yes, yes, as the applicant stated, still to be determined. In the meantime, they would operate the short-term rental themselves until they found somebody to do it.
I see, okay.
Okay,
Chris has a question in chat that for Clay, which is, are applicants required to have a property manager as listed in 15.225.060B?
Give me one moment to look that up and I will tell you.
Ashley, I think you already, this is planning commissioner,
Oh.
right?
Mhm.
I think you already, answered that they had the right to hire anybody if those are the conditions that, and that might be just a question of language, a and or thing. Cause
Right,
it says their number and a planning, a legal manager.
right. And so
So would that state legality and?
it would, if they choose to list themselves as both the kind of the applicant owner or the operator owner, as well as the rental management contact, that suffices. But my understanding is right now in the conditions of approval and in the staff report, we just still have it listed as a TBD. So if the planning commission would be more comfortable with that being fully completed prior to approving this, then that can be a condition of that that amendment is made. And between yourselves and the applicants, if it's determined that's what you want, then all you have to do is say approve as recommended with the amendment that X information be added into that. And so that would be fine. So we can clear that up and it would actually show up as determined amongst yourselves and perhaps with the input from the applicant in the planning commission order.
And then I have a question for the applicant.
go ahead.
Good evening. Have you ever managed a building before? Have you ever had properties that you've kept up on or kept? and all
Yes,
that?
I used to manage my friend's property as a short-term rental in Lincoln City. So I used to do all the booking and dealing with some customers.
That is wonderful. So you're not going into this blind. So that's good. All right. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have for the applicants. Commissioner Wright, thank you.
Okay, any further questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. So apparently we don't have anyone to oppose this. And so at this point, I'd like to close the public testimony portion of the hearing and get final comments from staff and recommendation.
Staff would still recommend approval. The commission would move to adopt planning commission order 2024-01 with conditions approving conditional use permit CUP 23-0018 for a vacation rental home at 1314 North College Street, Hill County Tax Lot R3218, excuse me, R3218 AD 06405.
Very well, thank you. Okay, so moving on to deliberation. What do we think?
Do we know where the individual who sent an email opposing this project, where they live in relationship to the subject property?
Don't believe they gave an address off the top of my head. I will double check on that.
So while we're waiting for that to be found, does anybody else have any thoughts about this application?
Commissioner
question.
Wright, I think it's pretty straightforward. There is no opposition to it. It seems to be in a good area and comply and be complete with the application as the staff is portrayed to us this evening. Any other thoughts, anybody?
A quick question for staff. I just want to make sure, just because, you know, I got the agenda from up there and it has CUP 23-0018, but it's CUP 24-0001, correct?
So the order number is 2024-001.
Okay.
Or yes, and just for record on the question about the comments received did not have an address with them, associated with them.
I assume he's not a next door neighbor because the applicants testified that they were supportive. And I should probably know the answer to this. It's more of a clarification. If somebody says that they're going to provide the property management, like the owner, is there a restriction on how far they live to be able to do that? So say somebody says, I reside in Bend, but I'll be the property manager. Is there any, no, you're outside the.
We don't have a standard for that. It could be one of those things that unfortunately it wouldn't be a problem until it's a problem. And so then we do have the provisions associated with complaints and those sorts of things.
Okay, so I guess it comes down to Commissioner Newton Curtis's concern about, do we add a amendment to this or not? I personally don't see the need to, but what do we think?
I think that's a question for discussion. Is it important to have something that is not TBD? I mean, do we want more, something a little more concrete that we can point to? Personally, I think there should be something more solidly in place.
Okay. Anyone share that concern? Want to add that to as a condition?
I would, you know, I would stay away from wanting to ask for necessarily a management company or anything. I think, you know, the persons involved could be, so you suggest that they could be listed as well. Yeah, if they're the owner, they could be listed.
Right,
as the person
the matter is, as I understand it, is whether to
to
add
take away
a,
the TBD.
right,
Okay.
yeah, not necessarily it's a management company.
I would agree.
Planning Commissioner Wright, this is a question for Clay. What did you guys just say? Gosh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay.
So in some of the prior discussion that led to the comments that the commissioners were just making, it's perfectly reasonable for the planning commission order to have TBD
Oh, that's
removed
right.
and replace it with the applicant's name and preferred contact information. That will not be a problem.
Because I do believe that's what the applicant stated that before they were going to do some stuff themselves, but they wanted to research further. Okay, this was my question. Can they legally get permitted to open up prior to announcing somebody?
This commission has approved that in the past while still listed as TBD. But if the commission would be more comfortable using their information as the contact information until they choose to notify the city that someone else will be their contact, then that's perfectly acceptable and staff can make that change through the planning commission order. That's not a problem.
One other thing I want to mention as staff is that the owner actually is on that front door posting as well as the proposed management person or company. So they are already on there as well.
Already on there.
Okay.
Okay. So it's kind of a redundancy.
Commissioner Muse, I believe you had something,
Maybe.
or was it Commissioner Griffith?
No, that was answered with that comment. so
Okay.
I'm good.
Anyone else have any thoughts? Okay, so how about a motion? Does,
Yeah, Commissioner Musil here. I move that we approve CUP 24-0001 for conditional use permit for a single family dwelling as a vacation rental home at 1314 North College Street.
Very
This
well,
is
have a motion.
Commissioner Quinn. I second that.
Very well, I have a motion and I have a second. We get a roll call vote, please.
Jason Dale,
Yes.
Laney Quinn,
Yes.
Jeff Musall,
Yes.
Chris Wright,
Yes.
Linda Newton Curtis,
Yes.
Mike Griffiths,
Yes,
Nina Inglesby.
Yes.
Very well, thank you very much. Motion passes. And I wish the applicants good luck on your future vacation rental. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have one more question. The number you just read, 24001, is not my application number. Is that, I'm just want to make sure we are
It's the
talking.
order number. We'll get it sorted out which number
Okay,
switch. It's fine.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We have another conditional use permit, CUP 23-0022. It's for a single family dwelling as a vacation rental home at 3232 East Province Court.
Commissioner Dale? Commissioner Dale,
Yes,
do we need to swear in our new commissioner?
do we need to swear in our new commissioner? That's a question for staff. I do not believe so.
I don't believe so, and I don't believe that we have done that in the past.
I think that's been the mayor's purview in the past and he's not here, so.
That's correct. Our newest commissioner was appointed by the mayor and city council, so that's all that's required at this time, I believe.
Okay.
Although, while we've got the mic open, I would say welcome to our newest commissioner. And we have a new student
See, now-
commissioner who's scheduled to be appointed.
Now you steal my thunder, I do that at the end of the meeting.
Oh,
so-
sorry,
no,
sorry,
just-
sorry. You can strike that. It's fine. You can go ahead with it in the future.
Okay, so
Thank you.
we'll do another announcement, please. And Ms. Inglesby, do you want to do that again, or do we want to share the love?
Share the love.
Okay. Can you here, let's okay, Ms. Faye volunteers.
ORS 197.797 requires certain statements to be made at the commencement of public hearing. The applicable city and state zoning criteria must be listed. This means that we must advise you of the standards that must be satisfied by the applicant prior to our approval or denial of an application. The planning staff will list applicable criteria during his or her presentation of the staff report. Persons wishing to participate in this hearing must direct their testimony or the evidence toward the criteria stated by the planner or other specific city or state criteria which you believe apply. You must tell us why the testimony or evidence relates to the criteria. Any issue which might be raised in an appeal of this case to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, must be raised in person or by letter at the local level prior to the city approving or denying the application. The law states that the issue must be raised in enough detail to afford the decision maker and the prior parties an opportunity to respond. This part of the law is known as the raise it or waive it requirement. If you do not bring it up now, you can't bring it up at LUBA. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval in enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing on an application, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission will grant such request through a continuance or extension of the record.
Thank you very much, Faye. At this point, I'd also like to call for abstentions, bias, ex parte contact, and objections to jurisdiction. Hearing none, we'll move on to the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Jeremiah Cromie, Associate Planner for the record, and I will read staff report into the record. This next hearing is for vacation rental at 3232 East Province Court, applied for by Taylor and Bailey Smith, using an existing one bedroom of a single family dwelling for a vacation rental. It's on tax lot R3221BB 00712, and the applicable criteria for conditional use 15225 and 060, and then vacation rental homes 15445 300 through 15445 350. Province Court is off Springbrook Road, not too far south of Highway 99 and Hayes Road. Zoned R2, which is medium density residential, and surrounded a little bit on R2 and then unincorporated county islands nearby. Property served by water, sewer, and Province Court, and then also a stormwater collection that is in the court and then goes to behind the home in a stormwater tract. Proposed parking area is behind the house for the 2 required parking spots. So I want to show you guys where that actually was, because it's hard to see on an aerial. So the applicable criteria for conditional use permits, there's 3 of them. The first being 15225-060, which is location, size, design, and operating characteristics are reasonably compatible with surrounding neighborhood and have minimal impacts on livability. The proposed project is an existing single-family home with 5 bedrooms, with only the 1 being used for a vacation rental. The 2 off-street parking spaces are provided behind the house, as shown in the last slide. And then the use is compatible with other residential uses, similar in size and scope to other regular rented or owned dwellings. The second conditional use criteria being 15225-060B, location design and site planning. The proposed development provide convenient and functional living, working, shopping, or civic environment, and attractive nature use. The location of the vacation rental is near 2 arterial roads, Springbrook Road and then Highway 99, or Portland, also known as Portland Road, that provide access to Newburgh's amenities. And it's similar in size and scope to a long-term rental, being longer than 30 days or an owner-occupied dwelling. The proposed development will be consistent with code of 15225-060. It's compatible with other residential uses, similar in size and scope. And it's also consistent with the criteria and the vacation rental standards, which I will go through next. Vacation rental standards start 15445-310. That must be a single family dwelling. 3232 East Province Court is an existing single family dwelling, and it should say the R2 zone. And then 15445-320 be registered with city and transient lodging tax. The owner is indicated they'll register with the city and pay required transient lodging tax. 2 off-street parking spots are provided behind the house, and then that maximum occupancy for the 1 bedroom is 2 guests, so 2 per bedroom, so a maximum of 2 guests. And then weekly waste collection will be provided by Waste Management, and the premises will not have RVs, tents, or other temporary shelters during the stay. And then the owner will have the contact info, police, vacation rental standards, maximum occupancy. A garbage pickup day be posted next to the door. With that, staff recommends that the commission move to adopt Planning Commission Order 2024-02 with conditions approving conditional use permit CUP 23-0022 for a 1-bedroom vacation rental home at 3232 East Province Court, Yamhill County Tax Lot R322 1BB 00712.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this point? Please.
So this is another question for you, Clay. So when we have all these standards that people are supposed to meet, so for example, they indicate that they'll pay tax, or they indicate that they will post names, etc. on the door. Is there any follow-up to make sure that that actually happens?
So some of the follow-up does happen. So for one, the transit lodging tax that we make sure they register for, that's a condition of approval. They get what we refer to as a welcome packet, although it's a welcome packet inviting them to register to pay taxes. So I don't know if that's, it's a bit of a euphemism, but so we do follow up, we do those things, we give them instructions and make sure they get connected with the appropriate folks. Things like posting and what happens inside the house, we do not have compliance officers to go and investigate that. That would be something that we might search for documentation or note that if there is a complaint or if something is brought to our attention that something's not happening the way that it should be, that would be an expectation that they're required to continue operating that way. So there is an extent of trust that's expected, but as part of the way that we operate, we don't currently do post-approval inspections, but we do receive complaints, although we've only received one since approximately 2015 that's come to the Community Development Department. And then the other ones are just making sure that they have met the requirements of what we expect that are under direct control of the city.
Yeah, it seems that in general terms, people are always very concerned about the money aspect, and I understand that entirely. But it does concern me at times that although there's the expectation that individuals will do as they say, I'm not always convinced that that's the case. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff at this point? Commissioner Griffiths?
Just, clarify. Even though the applicant is applying for a bedroom, I think in the daylight basement or something like that, should the applicant decide to move out and turn the entire house into a vacation rental, does that require a separate application?
They would either have to submit a new application or do a modification of this one.
Okay, any further questions for staff? Okay, very well. At this point, I'd like to open the public.
Actually, I
testimony.
do.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
Oh, man. I wish I wasn't sick. I'm losing my thoughts way too quickly. What were we talking about?
The vacation rental. Questions for staff?
Oh, God. Okay, when I remember, I'll put it in the chat for Clay. And know it was important. Oh, I do remember now. Jeez. Okay, under our codes, bed and breakfasts usually are with owners present and stuff. What qualifies as a bed and breakfast versus a short-term rental with the applicant there living within there but has a separation versus shared housing?
So a bed and breakfast is required to have someone acting as staff present. Vacation rental is not. That doesn't mean that the resident can't be present. It just means that for a bed and breakfast, one is required to be present. And that's summarizing those. The definitions themselves are, the language is a little different, but we can look that up and, read that out for the commission for all of you to think about if you would like us to. But that would be, in a nutshell, the biggest difference is the requirement to be there as opposed to a vacation rental is at the owner's discretion or the operator or owner's discretion.
Okay,
One other thing I want to point out as staff is the difference between a bed and breakfast and a vacation rental. The bed and breakfast is actually limited, I believe, to 15 days in length for the time length. And so if they wanted to go more than that, they could still do essentially bed and breakfast, but as a vacation rental for longer stays. So.
okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, like to, at this point, open the public testimony for the applicant and any proponents and opponents. And do we have the applicant here? Ah,
Yes, we do.
okay, go ahead and have a seat and turn your, press the button before speaking. We got these nice little signs now. And state your name and record, your name and location for the record, and give us what you want to say.
Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Bailey Smith, the applicant for this vacation rental. I don't necessarily have anything to add, but I'm more than happy to answer questions if you guys have any.
Okay, any questions for the applicant here? Anyone from the land of Zoom? Okay. Well, that's short and easy. So
You made it easy on me.
that's right. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we don't have any opponents on Zoom or anything, right, Faye?
Nope.
Okay. Very well. So at this point, I'd like to close public testimony and get final comments from staff and a recommendation.
Staff still recommends that the commission move to adopt planning commission order 2024-02 with conditions approving conditional use permit CUP 23-0022 for a 1-bedroom vacation rental home at 3232 East Province Court, Yamhill County Tax Lot R3221BB 00712.
Okay, any further questions for staff? Okay, so moving on to deliberation, what do we think? All that, huh? So if we don't have
Looks,
much to say,
Looks pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead. and
We'll go
move
with the
that we,
motion.
Yep.
Approve CUP 23-0022 conditional use permit to use 1 bedroom of a single family dwelling as a vacation rental home at 3232 East Province Court.
Commissioner Wright, I second.
okay, very well. I have a motion in a second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Dale,
Yes.
Laney Quinn,
Yes.
Jeff Musaw,
Yes.
Chris Wright,
Yes.
Linda Newton Curtis,
Yes.
Mike Griffiths,
Yes.
Nina Inglesby. Yes.
Very well. Motion passes. Congratulations to the applicant. Thank you for coming by and sharing our night here tonight with us. Okay, moving on. We have one more. So,
Is that, excuse me,
oh, this
Commissioner
one
Wright?
canceled one.
Yep.
Okay,
Should
Then we
that one
don't have-
else,
I'm sorry.
should that one also be titled CUP 24-0002?
Jeremiah? From the staff report, what's the planning commission order? Is that what Commissioner Wright's asking about?
The planning
Yeah.
commission order for that CUP 2322 is 2024-02. So those orders are from the city.
Oh,
record-
never mind. I
Okay, yeah, I think
It-
she's asking about the
okay.
prefixes here for CUP 23.
Ah, okay.
So,
Sorry, I should have gotten clarification on that one.
So yeah, the conditional use permits were applied for in 2023, so that's why they have it in
That's what I
2023.
suspect.
But the order is from this year, and that's why it has a 24 number.
okay,
okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
so the Chandler Drive one is canceled, withdrawn. So we will move on to new business. Do we have anything?
Here, I did want to jump in if it's okay to address one of the discussions, and the chair wasn't here before the meet or at the last one, so it might be particularly good, but during the last planning commission hearing, this one went on for a while and basically we experienced a deadlock where there were some people who were ready to approve and there's some people who were not interested in that. And we ended up with a couple of 3-3 votes and we're really at kind of an impasse. And so one of the things came up are what are our options as a planning commission? And so amongst ourselves as staff, we had a pretty thorough discussion trying to get to the meat of it, and then ended up having to speak with the city's attorney. And so when we looked at specifically, it's the section regarding type 3 procedures for quasi judicial hearings.
Mhm.
And there's a section in there, the very first section A, that says all type 3 decisions shall be heard and decided by the planning commission, period. The planning commission's decision shall be final unless the decision is appealed or the decision is a recommendation to the city council. And so in this situation, that would mean that in the case of a tie, the planning commission is required to figure it out and come to some decision. And that the option to essentially refer that, which is something we talked about at the end of that hearing, is not available to the planning commission. It can't defer to or refer that to the city council. And the city attorney, when I spoke with him too, agreed that the failure of a motion is not a final decision. We're required to get to a final decision. The planning commission does have the option to table or continue items. That continues to be available. So if there's something that you want, the planning commission can also consider doing that, or ask staff or whomever to come up with more information to address questions. So there's some things you can do, but it is somewhat limited. It really rests with the planning commission. So I just wanted to highlight that.
So it's looking at that as a hypothetical, should that situation come up in the future? I believe the recourse is, to extend like you're talking about, but then you also have to worry about the 120-day extension. So for those who don't recall, you have 120 days to process, that would be the right term, an application, unless they
issue a final decision.
Yeah, unless they waive that right as an applicant. But if you are not processing it or not approving it because you're deadlocked, that's probably not something the applicant's gonna want to waive on.
Right,
So-
the extensions can be granted, but those are granted by the applicant.
Exactly.
So that it's at their discretion of whether they choose to do it. And the penalty, as it were, if the city were to go more than 120 days without issuing a final land use decision, then the applicant has the ability to go to a judge and request a writ of mandamus. And I'm probably mispronounced that badly, so I apologize. But if they get that writ, which is how people typically talk about it, then the judge can give direction to the city council or not the city council, but to the city that will be approved or whatever. And typically that might not include the conditions of approval, or it might just be, it's approved and I don't care what the staff wrote, but it's approved because you didn't do what you were supposed to. So that's kind of the hazard, why we don't want to cross that threshold, or at least one of the hazards.
So just to make sure I'm understanding you, if we came to a deadlock again, theoretically, we just have to keep going until we finally came to a decision, which means
Yes.
we'd be looking for one person to cave in on.
It could be more than one person that caves in, but yes, we would be looking for
it
the
would
planning
be- one would
commission
Be enough.
to get to a majority.
Yeah.
And it could be, I mean, even the conversation last time was fairly lengthy. So it could be challenging.
Could indeed.
That's why they pay us the big bucks. So. Okay.
Planning
So
Commissioner Wright, I have a
ahead.
question. Since this one was tabled at the December 23 meeting, do the planning commission that was present only vote again? Or will the two additional planning commissioners here have an opportunity to vote on that? And if so, do we need to have a staff presentation again?
None of that will be required, but thank you for the question. In other circumstances, it would be appropriate to make sure that everyone had the same information. But in this one, since the applicant has withdrawn the application, it's not necessary.
I believe that's the discretion of the chair type of thing. And, there's no reason not to do that, so.
Just one thing on it, no. It's kind of a moot point where it was pulled, but wasn't it left as an open hearing? So do we still have to close the hearing or?
Public testimony was closed before it was tabled.
Yeah,
So
Unless,
we adjourned the meeting. I'm not sure how it would remain open, and it was tabled through the process that it would typically
okay,
be
so we're
tabled for the
fine
next
just
meeting.
to,
But
so
as
yeah,
a
you can
withdrawn,
talk to staff, but you just can't talk to the applicant and leave it that way.
yeah.
okay.
So I think there are no further actions needed at
Okay,
this time.
cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's separate from the new business item on our agenda, or no?
That's all the quasi judicial hearings you have. The only thing left from the staff side of things is the kind of general update that includes the forward-looking calendar and a memo that I delivered to each of you.
Please.
So one of the things that was given to you in your packet was just the general forward-looking calendar, a continuation of what we typically see. One of the things that, and I'll touch on this in a little more detail when I go through the memo that I gave folks hard copies to. The folks in Zoom got a copy sent to them by email. But we have some more CUPs coming up, and the items that are long-range planning over the coming months, those could change based on what feedback we get from city council on the 16th. And so there could be additional where we currently see TBDs in May through August on this memo. But depending on the recommendation we get from city council, we might update some of those on what they have to tell us. And so with that, I'll go to the next one, which was the hard copy that was given to each of you. And so last month I tried to just have a basic memo that covered some of the topics that have either happened recently or in the pipeline. And may or may not be directly related to what the planning commission is doing, but they could affect the interests of the planning commission. So I wanted to make folks aware of that. So one is that the city has hired a new community development director. So Scott Siegel will be joining us and tentatively scheduled for February 5th. We're very excited about it. He brings a lot of land use and specific Oregon land use experience. And so I think that's going to be an immense asset as someone who's been both the planning manager and the interim community development director since Doug rode off into the sunset. I am thrilled that we'll be having him join the team. But he had so we're looking forward to having him meet all of you too. And he will be starting shortly before the February Planning Commission hearing. So he should be here for the next one. The next item on there is the short-term rental update and short-term rental ad hoc committee activities. So we didn't have any other further action since the last meeting, but next week we have the next committee meeting coming up for the short-term rental ad hoc committee meeting. Where their hope is to wrap up their recommendation. They were hoping to do it last time and they didn't get there. So it's gonna be an additional discussion to get that wrapped up. That'll go to city council, and then pending that direction from city council, staff will start working on things. Based on those discussions tentatively, it seems like there's an interest in having staff make some modifications to things, but we'll really have to see how that plays out at city council, because a number of the city councilors have not been involved in those discussions because they're not those committee meetings. So we'll see how that goes. But when that goes to city council with the short-term rental ad hoc committee's recommendation, the planning commission one will go with it. The information that your commission received about what our code compliance police staff found when they evaluated their calls for assistance and complaints against short-term rental addresses. And they'll also get the research paper again. So they'll get that as a full packet. So we'll kind of build it up on anything they've received on the topic thus far or in the recent months. The another one that's not directly related to this commission, but particularly for large housing related projects, I thought this would be worth sharing. But in the memo, you'll see that there have been 2 notices of funding availability. I see that in the heading, I actually put available instead of availability. I apologize. For the Construction Excise Tax Fund and the Newburgh Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So there will be a total of $461,107 available, or up to that amount, for various types of projects, and it comes from those 2 funding sources. So on December 16th, the City Council authorized staff to proceed with that, with the notice of funding availability from the Newburgh Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that's a much smaller quantity. That's for up to $64,057. And then earlier this month, on January 2nd, the City Council authorized staff to proceed with the notice of funding availability for the Construction Excise Tax Fund. And that one was couched a little differently. If anyone tuned into that, they wanted to keep a portion of that fund available for a different window and kind of request for proposals and submissions at a later time. And so they said that there was a total of approximately just over $1.5 million available in that fund. They wanted to retain $1 million of the fund for that later notice of funding availability for what they were kind of generally calling amongst themselves a legacy project. They wanted to see something big or impactful and meaningful. And they didn't define exactly what that meant or how that would be graded. It was just something that was a bit of a dialogue. It was an interesting one. And so this round will include up to $397,050 being available to various projects. So it should be a good one. This will be posted in the local newspaper. The city will also be doing some other things to kind of get the communications out there and try and get the word out for these items. And the applications for both of these funding sources will be due on April 4th. There will only be one deadline for the construction excise tax fund, but for the Newburgh Affordable Housing Trust Fund, if all of the funds are not awarded in the first round, then it will, some of those funds will continue to be available for other applications. So those can be found, and they're not up on the website yet, but they will be shortly. So that could be anytime. So we're actively putting those up. Then the last item that's on here is the pending projects, and that's what I was alluding to with that we might see additional direction from city council on exactly what they want us to work on and how they want us to prioritize things. So Jeremiah here will be presenting to city council next week on the 16th and kind of tentatively call it our pending projects list, but it's really putting together a work plan for the city council to look at, generally categorizing those into critical projects, significant projects, and other projects. And over the years, staff kind of accumulates these things that folks want us to work on. And so it can be really challenging when we hear that there's a new interesting thing folks want us to work on, but we know that somewhere there's other things we haven't done yet. So by having something that's shaped like a work plan, it allows us to say, we will be happy to work on that. Where do you want to put it in this list? And so we're doing those sorts of things. And it's a good, just general communication practice for us to have hopefully annually with the city council, where we get direction for them and make sure their priorities have not changed to such an extent where we start working on something, we bring it forward and they say, why did you spend your time on this? So that's why we're hoping that some of those will go there. If that sounds like that's something of interest to you all, then I would encourage you to consider tuning in or watching the city council meeting, or even just going and looking at the materials that are already in the city council's agenda packet. So that's what we've got for you. Does anyone have any questions about anything?
Is it possible to see the ad hoc committee's recommendations before the city council makes a final decision? Because if they're meeting on the 17th, the city council is going to meet before we meet again in February. I'd like the opportunity to maybe tweak our recommendations or add to whatever. I'd like to hear what the ad hoc committee is recommending so that, because we made our proposals back in November, right?
I believe so.
November 20th.
It was October or November, but I don't remember which one it was. The
I think it was October. There was no November meeting.
Okay.
Oh, well, there you go. The so staff is not planning on bringing these back. We would be happy to send that to the planning commissioners because you have expressed interest once we have those available. But I would basically be putting those into the city council packet and it'll go to city council. And that's really the pathway that we're taking. Typically, those sorts of recommendations, we don't kind of, if it's intended for the city council, usually they're the first ones to get it. And that's typically how we make those sorts of things available. But that packet is available a week in advance. But it would be unusual. And right now, staff, we're not planning on bringing this something. You've made the recommendation that you've made and it's appreciated, but we're not planning on bringing that recommendation here so that you can consider whether or not to modify your prior recommendation. It's just making a path longer for something that's already been significantly longer than we were really hoping for, honestly.
Can you send the recommendations we made in October then?
Yeah, we would be happy to. And I'll be from January 17th, even if they do it that evening, we probably won't, the way that the city council meetings fall, we probably won't go on the very next meeting. Usually we try and get things into our own internal review systems on what we're looking at approximately 3 weeks in advance, and we're required to post them no less than a week in advance. So it would be a pretty narrow window for us to get that right away, but we'd be happy to do that.
Clay, I'm sorry.
Is the meeting on the 17th a public meeting or is it closed?
It is a public meeting.
And would it be in this room?
It will not be in this room. Usually we've been holding them, they've been hybrid and they've been in the first floor, they've been in the City Hall Permit Center conference room, which is on the main floor. So anyone would be welcome to attend. And you can.
That meeting's at
remotely.
3 o'clock.
I do not remember off the top of my head when it is. Oh, Faye does though, and it's at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, because I would definitely like
So
to
as we're kind
attend.
of talking here, I in my readings recently, and this is related to the vacation rental thing, maybe just write this down as like a note or an idea or something. Because it may not apply to Newburgh, but so one of the methods for controlling that a little bit was to tax vacation rentals as commercial property. Now that depends on there being a different and higher tax rate for commercial properties versus residential properties. And so you can kind of say, okay, if you're trying to do this to make money, you're going to make less money by doing it this way because we're going to tax it this way. Saying it's a commercial use, I mean, kind of then you're getting into zoning and you're going to probably disallow a lot of things where maybe we don't want to disallow things outright, but to say, okay, you can do this, but it's going to cost you more, maybe is a kind of a, backdoor way to curtail some of it. Should that be the desire to do stuff? And so I didn't have this idea myself. I saw this in some of my readings and I thought that was maybe an elegant solution for what we may deem a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so any items from commissioners? Commissioner Musil?
Yeah, I have one, and I just wanted to say that unfortunately, I am gonna resign from the commission. And I just wanted to let everybody know and attend this one and do the handover on the thing and stuff like that, because I've really enjoyed, being on
It's
and
been a while.
everything. It's been a minute. And it's great to see a new person, and make sure that I'm not leaving, things in a clutch or anything, but I just got so many other projects on that it's kind of overloading, and odds are I'm going to be out of the area for the summer anyway, and things like that. So it just seemed like a good time with the new year, at the and the transition and everything. So Clay and Faye, if you want to get in touch with me for what I need to do, get the old iPad, that's the thing, back and everything. But yeah, it's surprisingly not an easy decision, because I really have enjoyed it. So, but just wanted to
Sorry to see
see
you go.
everybody and say thank you all, and it's been good.
Well, let's go down on a more positive note. So welcome to meet Miss Nina Inglesby. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then each one of us will tell us or tell you about us.
Yeah, that sounds great. My name is Nina Inglesby. I have been living in Newburgh for about 3 years now. I'm originally from the Seattle area and I'm loving Oregon. I previously was working at George Fox University and am recently moving into a associate account planning role at a marketing company remotely. And I'm just excited to be getting more involved in local government and yeah. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Well,
What brought you down from Seattle?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Commissioner Quinn here. What brought you down from Seattle?
I went to 3 schools for my undergraduate education and
Oh boy.
ended up at Central Washington University and then moved down to Bend, Oregon for a year and moved now over to Newburgh because of my in-laws I'm sorry, it's late. I'm a morning person. Yes, my in-laws live here. So just family.
Okay.
Well, hello. It's really nice to see you at the meeting this evening. So, I've lived in Newburgh now since 91, so just over 30 years. Before that, I was living and working actually all over the world in different places. I've been here on this commission, I guess, for about a year now. I think I've caused a few little waves along the way. But yeah, I've also really enjoyed this, being involved in this. I think actually it's a really important place to be. And I think what we're asked to do sometimes can be frustrating, but I do think it's very, very important. What else to say? I guess that's it for now.
My name is Jason Dale. I'm been in the area basically all my life, other than 5 years in the Navy. And where I was overseas, and my family runs Sportsman Air Park, the airport here in town, and we've been there so it started by my grandfather in 1946. And then he was from Nebraska, and then my grandma was from Dayton. So yeah, we go back a ways. And I've been on the commission since 2012. And yeah, it's a pretty rewarding thing. A lot of people may find this stuff tedious, or overwhelming, but I mean, it's just kind of, you kind of see the logic behind everything and kind of see everything works, and you hit on a few key rules you have to take care of each time, and treat everybody with respect and get along fine. Have fun doing it. You see people come up here and just make sure everybody gets heard. This is the main thing, and including everybody here. So and I hope you have fun, and warmest welcome. It's always good to have new blood. So.
Yeah, and just really quick, I'm Jeff Musall, and I think I've been on 4 years with you.
More than that.
More than that?
Well, yeah, it's
Time flies when you're having fun.
Pre-COVID, more like 6 or 7, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was surprised the other day to find out our dog is 8 years old that we've had for a while, so it does fly. But yeah, lived here since my son's 16, and we moved here just before he was born, because we wanted a stable growing up thing for him. I lived all over the country, all over places, from little things to, like you said, Indianapolis. My junior year in high school, I was at Carmel in there.
That's where I went to high school.
Okay, then my junior year, I'm guessing I was there a bit before you, but yeah, I went from a school with 13 combined students in 2 grades in northern Nevada and Idaho, then a school in Idaho that was a little bit bigger than, I think it was the biggest school in Indiana at the time, Carmel High. And then I came out here and graduated at Dallas, and then went back to Idaho and then went in the Navy. So it's, long story short, we wanted a stable community for our son and everything, and it's been exactly that. It's been a good choice, and he'll be graduating next year and off to college. So we've done that part of the job, but I've just moved into some other things, like with nonprofit work and consulting work, and it's slamming me with a lot of things to do. So it seems like a good time to make a transition. And again, thank you all for everything, and for just putting up with you on the commission. And Linda, you keep making waves. Waves keep the water fresh. But thank you all.
This is Commissioner Wright. I am so sad to see you go, Jeffrey. I have enjoyed your presence and the way you've presided over meetings, and I really will miss you, and I'll be in touch with you. I'm going to tell a little bit about myself as well. In this, I've been coming to Newburgh for 50 years with my father, who was one of the original builders here. I was his hod carrier, and I did other things as well in building houses, but that's where I learned about building and building codes. And that is also why I too brought my family here, and have now been a resident for over 11 years. And I went to Portland State University. I'm an atmospheric research scientist, but I also have a background in geology, geography, genetics, transportation planning, urban planning, and environmental sciences. And I'm a grandma and a mom, and I'm so happy that my daughter just moved back and she's a pharmacist. So I'm psyched that she's home. But that's it about me. And it's good to meet you, and I'm glad we got down here together in time.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Commissioner Griffiths?
I've been on the commission for about a year. I am retired. I previously worked, well, I think it's the Navy contingency, after spending 6 years in the Navy.
Can't get away from the squids.
I know. I worked as a nurse and eventually became a flight nurse and came up here. And even somehow wound up being the CEO of Life Flight for 14 years. And now I own a few restaurants, one here in Newburgh and two in McMinnville.
May I ask which restaurant in Newburgh?
Old Town.
And it's much better now. Am I the last one?
Yeah, go ahead, Lainey.
Okay, thank you. Hi, sorry I'm not there to see you in person. Just so it's not a surprise, I will be literally mid-flight on my way home during the next month's meeting, so I won't be available, but I'm hoping to be back in person come March. Hopefully the plane door doesn't fly off. I'm not looking forward to my Alaska flight. But my name is Lainey Quinn. Mike and I actually joined the commission at the same meeting, I think, about a year. Wasn't it a year ago with the same meeting? 1 year ago? I'm in Newburgh with my family. We've been here for, I think, going on 7 years, but I'm actually a native Oregonian. I kind of grew up in Hillsborough, lived in Beaverton, Portland, and just I never really made it far. So I have a degree from Portland State University in communications and community development from urban studies and planning. So I thought this would be a fun way to try and get back to that a little bit, because I've actually been in wine for my career, and I've been in wine for over a decade now. And I run the memberships for the portfolio that my winery has. So I run the membership for the Argentine label, the Napa label, and the label here in the Willamette. So I got into wine, but I'm excited to be here and kind of scratch that old community development itch that I had my degree in. So.
Staff, do you want to introduce yourselves too? I guess we're all having a party here, so.
Well, if we're around, I'm happy to do that, and if they can, the others can opt in if they want to. So my name's Clay Downing. I've been only relocated to Newburgh a little over a year ago, and I am originally from Carmel, Indiana, but most people don't know what that is or where it is, so I usually just say Indianapolis. But it's nice to know that there's another former Greyhound here. I went to school at Indiana University, and then when I relocated to California after I served in the Peace Corps, I worked there for the Nature Conservancy and then later County of Ventura after I went back to school and got a degree in public policy and administration, and have since moved up here. So mostly have spent time in planning, working on comprehensive planning, which is kind of like, it's just like how we have a comprehensive plan. So spending time doing a lot of work in that, and as well as other topics, and got to spend the last year before I relocated up here administering the County of Ventura's new climate action plan. So that was kind of an interesting new topic to be a part of too. And when I'm not doing planning stuff, I like to try and do anything outside or lots and lots of cooking. So cooking. So I do lots of cooking.
You have to share some recipes.
I will think about good ones. That's always fine too. So.
All right, I'm Jeremiah Cromie. I actually grew up in Tualatin, so not too far from here, but I have been out of the area for 6-7 years now. I actually went back to school at Eastern Washington University and got my urban regional planning degree there, and took a job in Minnesota. And then the last 2.5 years before coming here, I was working for Kittitas County in Central Washington, so home of Central Washington University in Ellensburg. And I've been back about 6 months now, working a little over 4 at the city. And my wife's teacher down in McMinnville at Patton Middle School. So, and we're both tall. We do play basketball. I also play miniature golf, love miniature golf. And I like to go hiking when it's nice out.
So those 2 months of the year then.
Yeah. I'm Faye Bates. Since we're going way back, I moved here in 97 and worked for a builder doing entitlements and stuff. And then in 2008 showed up and didn't do that for quite a while. And I started, did miscellaneous stuff, worked for a nonprofit. And then I went and worked for a title company doing development and builder services. And then after that, I started to be 2 years now in March with the city. And so, yep. I like working for the city a lot. And I like it a lot. And I like doing stuff outside too, when it's not raining. And I also want to make sure everybody got their new iPads.
I'm late. I need to do it yet.
Okay.
I did.
And-
Thank you, Faye.
Okay. So people who have not gotten their new iPads need to turn in their old ones and get their new ones.
Okay.
All right. That's all for me.
Okay. Can't get much more welcoming than that. Okay, so if nobody has anything else, we are adjourned.